This isn't just a motivational phrase, this is the start of a quiet revolution. It's a fundamental shift, a transformation at the very core of your mindset. Old ways of thinking are replaced with a powerful new foundation, one that can reshape the way you walk, talk, think, and act. No longer reliant on luck or mere chance, you'll live with one profound realization. Life follows the assumptions I hold in my mind. And this, my friend, is something most people never truly grasp until it's too late. Pause for a moment and take a good look at this truth. The way you expect things to unfold is often exactly how they unfold. Not because of fate, but because of focus. It's your dominant thoughts that steer your reality, pulling everything around you into alignment with what you believe to be true. It's not just about what you say or do. It's in the way you respond to challenges, how you move forward or retreat, the tone of your voice, and whether you push through the storm or give up when things get tough. So, starting today, what if you began assuming just one thing, that everything is working in your favor? Even when the going gets tough, even when the answers aren't clear, even when there's no tangible proof to rely on. Imagine what would shift in your life if you started acting as though the outcome is already certain, as if the door was already open, and all you had to do was walk through it. This isn't about wishful thinking. This is mental engineering. It's the exact mindset that some of the greatest minds in history used to rise above failure, criticism, and fear. When the world laughed at the idea of a car, Henry Ford didn't debate it. He built a factory. He didn't wait for approval. He acted as though success was already guaranteed. Thomas Edison didn't dwell on his failures. Whether it was the 100th attempt or the 10,000th, he kept going, not because he knew he was right, but because he believed success was inevitable. Edison didn't need to see the light with his eyes. He had already seen it in his mind. And when you believe so deeply that you act as though your success is certain, your life starts to align itself with that assumption. Charles Schwab, a key figure in the steel industry, didn't let fear guide him. His unwavering belief in himself was contagious, spreading to everyone around him. Andrew Carnegie, an icon of American wealth and innovation, never asked, "What if this doesn't work?" He lived as though the outcome had already been decided. That kind of energy is powerful. It builds careers, shapes legacies, and inspires generations. And so, I ask you, why not you? Why not today? You've spent too much time doubting yourself, holding back, and telling yourself stories rooted in fear. You've hesitated, waited, and told yourself that the right moment will come. But the truth is, that moment doesn't arrive until you decide to act as though it's already here. It's time to reset your entire internal operating system. Shift from reacting emotionally to acting with certainty. Because the truth is, the I-too hesitant and decisive versions of you cannot coexist. One of them must disappear. If you truly want to rise, to become the best version of yourself, then the weaker part must go. I'm giving you a new lens, a new model for thinking, for acting. Live as though everything is always working in your favor. Not because someone promised you that, but because, when you assume it's true, you become unstoppable. When you know that success is inevitable, you walk with confidence, you speak with clarity, you stop negotiating with life, and start commanding it. And here's the most remarkable thing. When you repeat this mindset every day, not once, but consistently, your subconscious starts to accept it as truth. Fear begins to dissolve in the presence of your calm, and your life will start to align with the belief that the result is already secured. Fear can't survive where faith lives. You won't tremble if you believe everything is unfolding for a purpose, even if that purpose isn't clear right now. So, listen closely and take this seriously. Don't treat this as a temporary burst of motivation. Think of it as a reset of your entire mental framework. Speak this belief out loud. Let it flow through you, becoming a part of your very being. Because what we're doing here isn't just about motivation. It's about reprogramming who you are. And once you do that, you'll never think, act, or live the same again. Start with one question. A question that could change everything. What if everything is working in your favor? Not just the good things, not just the easy moments, but the failures, the setbacks, the pain, the silences, the wrong turns. Even those things are shaping you into the perfect person for the life you've been dreaming of. If you can live with that belief, that everything is for your good, your life will change. That's the beginning of your transformation. The truth is, most people don't live in the present moment. They live in mental scenarios, often imagining what could go wrong. They wake up with a feeling of dread, as if they're preparing to face disaster. They don't see the new day as a fresh start, but as a list of challenges they have to brace for. They don't speak to inspire. They speak to retell tales of failure, betrayal, and everything that could go wrong. It's as though they live in a house that's always on the brink of collapse, even when it's perfectly solid. And what happens next? The fear they constantly expect, the negative narrative they nurture every day, begins to manifest. Not because of fate, but because of focus. They unconsciously pour their energy into avoiding the very things they fear, instead of pursuing what they desire. That's the law of life. Energy flows where attention goes. But there's another way to live. A way that doesn't require perfection, that doesn't ask you to pretend to be strong or force positivity. It starts with one simple but powerful choice: to believe before you see. Believing before you see isn't superstition. It's the foundation of every invention, every revolution, every great creation in history. No bridge was ever built without an engineer first visualizing it in his mind. No light ever shone without Edison imagining the light bulb in his mind, even after countless failures. No affordable car ever rolled off an assembly line without Henry Ford first assuming it already existed. All he needed was for the world to catch up and see what he had already seen. Faith isn't a reaction to circumstances. It's a decision about the direction you choose to take. And that's where your transformation begins, when you realize that the subconscious doesn't question you when it doesn't ask, "Is this true?" It simply absorbs whatever you repeat. It doesn't care if you're joking or if you're complaining. It doesn't differentiate between a serious statement or a casual remark. It absorbs it all and then reconstructs your external world to reflect what you've programmed into it. If every day you tell yourself, "I'm unlucky," "Things always go wrong for me," your subconscious responds, "Understood." From that moment on, it begins to filter your world through that lens. You start to see failure everywhere. You become hypersensitive to negative signals. You act in ways that align with the fear you've planted. But what if you flipped the lens? What if every morning you woke up with a quiet, powerful belief deep within you? Everything is working for me, even when your bank account is empty, even when you've been betrayed. Even when the road ahead seems unclear, you walk forward, believing that every door is slowly opening. You build, assuming that the foundation is already laid, and you act as if the outcome is already here, even when no one else can see it yet. This mindset, when practiced daily, begins to reshape the entire structure of your inner world. Because when you believe everything is unfolding in your favor, you no longer panic when things go wrong. You no longer grow impatient while waiting. You don't need anyone to cheer you on because you've become your own leader. This isn't an illusion. It's a new form of leadership. Leadership from within. Thomas Edison once said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways." That won't work. That wasn't just persistence. That was the voice of someone who had already assumed that success was his, regardless of the time it would take. And that's the difference between someone who gives up after a few failures and someone who goes on to become a legend. One lives by proof, the other lives by assumption. It's this assumption, not your circumstances, that rewrites the course of your life. The strongest person isn't the one who has everything. It's the one who holds an unshakable mindset. It's the one who walks without needing recognition, acts without expecting immediate results, and sees every challenge as part of the journey, not an obstacle to it. So, the question you need to start asking yourself is no longer, what if everything goes wrong? But instead, what if everything is going right, and I just haven't calmed down enough to see it yet? This is the first shift from fear to faith. Not a faith that forces you to be optimistic, but a quiet trust that you hold deep within you, repeated daily, standing strong without needing proof. And when you practice this long enough and deep enough, you'll start to notice that the world doesn't change overnight, but your perception of the world does. And that shift? That's the first step toward real, lasting change. There's one thing all the greats in history have had in common. It wasn't luck, or genius, or financial backing. It was a belief that didn't rely on evidence, a belief that needed no praise, no recognition, and no immediate results. It's the kind of belief that can survive in the unknown. If you've never learned how to stand firm in uncertainty, then you haven't truly started leading yourself. Because the path to greatness isn't lined with bright lights. It's dim, cold, and full of twists, with no map to guide you. No one will cheer you on, and most people won't believe you're capable. There will be times when you look around and see nothing but darkness. No guidance, no guarantees, just a faint inner voice whispering, "I'm still on the right path." That's the foundation of inner leadership. Look at Edison, a man who failed over 10,000 times before he invented the electric light bulb. Would any of us still stay committed to something when every single attempt fails? Edison did, because he knew the result was inevitable, even when no one else could see it. Edison didn't keep pushing forward because he had proof that the next attempt would succeed. He kept going because, in his mind, the light already existed. It wasn't about if it would work, but when that light would materialize in the real world. His belief didn't come from what he could see. It came from within. When others called it delusion, he called it experimentation. When the world mocked him, he adjusted quietly. And when failure struck again, he didn't retreat. He pressed on because the certainty in his mind was stronger than the doubts surrounding him. That's the model of a quiet leader, someone who knows how to keep moving forward without applause, without the spotlight, and without tangible proof that success is waiting. Then there's Henry Ford, the man who believed in a car for the masses when the world said it was impossible. Investors walked away, engineers shook their heads, but Ford didn't stop. He didn't need to prove anything. He simply acted as if the dream was already real. He didn't argue. He didn't beg for approval. He moved forward as if to say, "I've already seen the result. Now it's your turn to see what I've seen." That wasn't arrogance. It was a deliberate decision about how to live. Ford said, "I will not live by the beliefs of the crowd. I will live by the belief I choose, and I will protect it like it's part of me." We're often taught to wait until we have all the facts, to make sure it's certain, to have a backup plan before we act. But this well-meaning advice slowly chips away at our creative instincts. The truth is, the most life-changing moments in your journey will never come with a guarantee. You'll have to take that first step, and only then will the path begin to reveal itself. You'll have to say yes before you know how. You'll have to put your full trust into something that hasn't yet happened, with the quiet belief that everything is secretly working for your good. And that's the challenge most people never overcome. They wait for certainty. They wait for the green light. They wait for someone else's permission. But what they don't realize is that certainty only comes to those who've already decided they don't need it. The strong are not those who can clearly see the path ahead. The strong are those who keep walking, even when the map is blank. That strength is not something you're born with. It's forged every time you choose action over hesitation. Every time you choose to keep going instead of giving up. Every time you sit down and write the next chapter of your plan, even when you can't see the finish line. You don't need clarity to begin. You need a decision that refuses to negotiate. Think about this. No great founder ever entered a market with a written guarantee. No one who ever changed their life rose from hardship with everything perfectly aligned. They started with one decision. to live as if what they desired had already come true. You might call that assumption. I call it a mechanism for steering your destiny. When you act as though the result is already certain, you send a completely different signal to the world. You speak with energy. You move with conviction. You look with intent. You walk with purpose. And your entire presence says, I've already shaped my future. Now I'm walking toward it. The world can't help but respond to that kind of energy. So if you find yourself in the dark, if you're unsure of what's coming next, remember, what you need isn't proof. What you need is courage. The courage to live as if everything is going according to plan. The courage to stand firm in uncertainty, yet move forward as someone who has already seen the outcome. That is the foundation of greatness. And if you're still here, you absolutely have the power to build that foundation starting today. If there's one thing that has completely reshaped the lives of those who've made history, it wasn't good fortune, a privileged start, or knowing how things would unfold. It was that they knew exactly what they wanted. They knew it so clearly that nothing could shake it. They knew it so deeply that every other option faded into insignificance. This one goal became their guiding light, shaping every decision, every action, every breath they took. The truth is this: the power begins with a single, unbreakable decision. In a world full of distractions, where you're pulled in many directions every single day, what keeps you from being swept away is clarity of purpose. Not a long wish list, not a vision board full of fancy cars and luxury homes, but a single, unmistakable question. What was I born to do? What must I build before my time runs out? If you can't answer that question decisively, no strategy or system will save you. Every action, no matter how efficient, will lose meaning if it doesn't move in a clear direction. Even the most powerful engine is useless without a compass, and the sad reality is that most people live like this. They wake up each morning without knowing what they're building. They're busy, but not directed. They act, but without a deeper goal. They work, but they don't know why. And that's why they don't see progress, despite all their hard work. Look at every person in history who changed the world, and you'll find one powerful decision behind their first step. Henry Ford didn't just want wealth, he wanted to revolutionize transportation. And because he was clear about what he wanted, every action he took aligned with that vision. Charles Schwab didn't just try, he knew he was there to build a steel empire. Abraham Lincoln didn't hope for a better future. He declared, America must be free. No nation, no industry, no personal destiny has ever been transformed by vague intentions. So the question is, have you written your decision sentence? Not 10 of them, not a long paragraph filled with inspiration, just one. One clear, concise, vital sentence that makes your heart race every time you read it. One sentence that makes you unwilling to waste another day. One sentence that realigns every priority in your life, showing you exactly what's worth pursuing and what must be let go of. That's your inner compass. This single sentence is the force that pulls all your resources, all your thoughts, all your behaviors in one direction. When you have that sentence, you don't need motivation every morning. You don't need comparisons. You're not rattled by someone else's temporary success because you know that every step you take is moving you toward something that you've chosen, and no one can choose that for you. From that clarity, focus is born. You don't need to read every book. You read the ones that serve your purpose. You don't talk to everyone. You connect with those who are aligned with your destination. You don't do everything. You do the right things. You don't fear failure because you understand that every setback is just part of the structure leading you to your goal. From there, you develop mental immunity. Immunity against distractions, doubt, and temptation. You no longer yearn for someone else's path because you're too busy building your own. You don't wait for opportunity. You live as though opportunity is already here. You don't need validation because that one sentence has given you an inner authority that surpasses any applause from the outside. And from that place, choices become simpler. Not because life is easy, but because you've eliminated the countless paths that no longer serve your mission. Your vision becomes your guide. Your subconscious is reprogrammed to serve only one purpose. Every word you speak, every habit you form, every ounce of energy you give is shaped by a purpose that can never be shaken. If you don't have that sentence yet, stop right now. Write it down. Look at your life as a limited timeline and ask yourself, what must absolutely be accomplished before I leave this world? Don't write what sounds good. Write what makes you restless. Write what, if left unpursued, would fill you with regret for the rest of your life. And then do this every morning. Read that sentence. Say it out loud. Write it again, not just to remember it, but to burn it into your subconscious until it becomes the only voice strong enough to lead you through every distraction, every lazy morning, every criticism, and every crisis. That's the foundation of true confidence. It's not eloquence. It's not about presentation. It's about knowing exactly where you're going. And once you have that, you'll never shrink from any challenge again. Because now, every challenge has a purpose. It's part of the path to what you've chosen. Belief doesn't need proof. That's one of the most powerful truths, but also one of the hardest principles for us to live by. We grow up in a world that teaches us to wait for results, to wait until everything is clear, to wait until there's enough evidence before we believe. But that's how you end up in constant delay, always waiting for a miracle to show up, while you could be the one creating it if only you trained your belief the right way. Real belief isn't born from a fleeting emotion. It doesn't come from reading a book or watching an inspiring video. It comes from repeating a conviction, with discipline and emotion, long enough that your subconscious can no longer deny it. You don't find belief, you build it, just like you build a house, brick by brick, action by action, thought by thought. And day after day, you'll find yourself standing in a structure so solid that not even doubt can break it. Think about the people you admire. They didn't succeed because everything was easy. They weren't confident because they were sure they were right. They acted as if what they believed was already real, even when no one acknowledged it, even when the results hadn't shown up yet, even when the world was silent. Thomas Edison didn't just hope the light bulb would work. He acted as though it was already a part of the world, even after more than 10,000 failures. And it wasn't just his belief in his mind. It was the repetition of that belief in his actions that created the outcome. It wasn't just inspiration anymore. It had become a new mental operating system. When you say something over and over, when you visualize it every day, when you act as though it's already yours, every part of your mind, your emotions, your actions, and your energy begin to align with that belief. At that moment, the world around you naturally starts responding to the frequency you're emitting. The subconscious doesn't judge right from wrong. It simply records what you repeat with emotion. So, if you constantly say, "I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this, I always fail," your subconscious accepts that as truth and begins to shape your reality around those beliefs. But if you change the script, if you look in the mirror every morning and say, "I'm building something great. I have the power to make a difference. I act as though success is inevitable," and repeat that every day with focus and determination, then, over time, you become what you've declared. This isn't theory. This is how the subconscious works. It stores every old program, every wound, every fear. But it is also the place where your entire identity can be rewritten, if you know how to train it. And the key? Intentional repetition. Think back to a time when you repeated a mistake over and over. Eventually, it didn't feel wrong anymore. It felt normal, and you lived with that new normal without questioning it. That's how the subconscious operates. It turns whatever you repeat into default behavior. So why not reverse that process to serve you? Why not repeat the belief you want to build, rather than letting your mind continually replay the fears you never asked for? The sad truth is, most people use their subconscious to reinforce their limitations instead of expanding them. They tell themselves, "I can't, I don't have time, I'm not like those successful people," and then they act as though it's a self-evident truth. But No one succeeds by repeating their old limits. Success comes from choosing a new version of yourself and practicing living as that person every day until the gap between who you want to be and who you already are disappears. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need one more piece of evidence. You need one thing: a declaration and practice. Repeat what you want to believe. Say it out loud. Write it down. Visualize it clearly. Rehearse it in every small action. And above all, act as though it's already true, because action is the fastest way to reinforce belief. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you're not just completing a task, you're reinforcing inner trust. Every time you wake up early as promised, read the book you committed to finishing, or do the hard thing instead of avoiding it, you're sending a message to your subconscious. I am someone who can be trusted. And from there, belief is no longer something you need to create. It becomes a part of you, a natural reflex, a new identity. So if you've been waiting for proof to start believing, stop. Understand this: belief that doesn't require evidence is the most powerful form of belief. It doesn't depend on external validation. It isn't shaken by temporary results. It doesn't need anyone's approval. It only needs you to repeat it, act on it, and live with it persistently. And one day, when you look back on your journey, you'll realize that what changed your life wasn't luck, opportunity, or someone else. It was your decision to believe, even when there were no guarantees. Because you believed long enough and lived that belief with unwavering consistency, that belief became your reality. There's a moment every person who truly wants to change their life must go through. It's not the moment when inspiration is at its peak. It's not the moment you achieve your first result. It's the moment when you make an irreversible decision. No more wondering, let's see how it goes. No more, if it doesn't work out, I'll change course. No more backup plans in silence. There's only one road, the road forward. One commitment, to see it through to the end. That is the moment you burn your bridge back. In classical military strategy, there's a symbolic act. After crossing the river to attack, the commander orders the bridge behind them to be burned. The soldiers are left with no retreat, no exit, no choice, but victory or sacrifice. And in that no-escape state, the true inner power of a person is unleashed. They give everything: will, strength, instinct, not because they're guaranteed to win, but because there is no other option. In life, too, people only unleash their full potential when they leave themselves with no retreat options. You cannot fully walk a new path with one foot still tied to the past. You cannot start a new chapter if you keep bookmarking the old one. You cannot live a different life if you keep mental escape routes for when things get tough. To truly change, you must close every old door, not out of extremism, but because you know that, if left open, your mind will always try to run back when adversity comes. We often deceive ourselves with gentle-sounding phrases like, "Let's just try. I can always go back. No need to rush this decision." But those words, though they may seem harmless, are what keep hesitation alive. They slow progress and feed the habit of living halfway. And in that state, no breakthrough is ever possible. Everything stays in the realm of almost. Almost starting. Almost changing. Almost reaching. Almost. Burning the bridge back doesn't mean being reckless. It means making a decision with full awareness, full courage, full commitment, and then acting as though there's nothing beyond the path you've chosen. It's the decisiveness needed to awaken your full potential, a power that remains suppressed by all the plan Bs you haven't yet let go of. Look at those who've reached the peak of achievement, and you'll see a common thread. They acted as though there was no turning back. Edison didn't say, "If it doesn't work, I'll quit." He said, "I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Ford didn't try to see if the automobile would suit the market. He poured his belief, money, and reputation into building the assembly line. Carnegie didn't build his steel empire with a mindset of keeping an exit route. He threw himself in as a man who didn't allow failure to be an option. These people weren't reckless. They were strategic. But what they never did was keep an escape hatch in their minds. And neither should you. If you have a dream, a decision, a path you know you must pursue, it's time to erase every way back. Erase compromises, like maybe 5 years from now. Erase the easy options that lead you nowhere. Erase connections that keep you tied to an outdated comfort zone. Because every escape route you keep open is another permission slip you give yourself to delay. And delay is the most subtle form of self-deception. When you burn the bridge back, you activate a powerful mechanism in your mind. It stops wasting energy debating, should I or shouldn't I, and redirects all your focus to how do I move forward. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop dialoguing with doubt. And you are left with only one task: move forward. In that moment, you begin to live fully, with willpower, responsibility, and commitment. Of course, it's not easy. You'll be tempted to turn back. Doubt will try to pull you. Others, voices will echo, and the memory of comfort from your old way will haunt you. But each time that happens, you must remind yourself, there is no turning back. The old version of me is gone. This is the only way forward. Write it down. Say it out loud every morning. Turn it into a declaration of your new identity. Don't wait for the perfect day. Don't wait for a send-off blessing. Don't wait for more proof. Make the decision and live as though there is no other option but to fulfill it. You can't become someone completely new if you still leave room for the old self. You can't write a powerful story if you're still afraid to tear out the unfinished chapters. And you cannot rise with full presence if you're still making halfway commitments. So, burning the bridge back isn't an act of recklessness. It's the strategy of someone who is resolute. Someone who understands that hesitation will always win if you give it a place to hide. And the only way to overcome it is to leave no place to hide. No emergency exit. No side road. No reason to slow down. From that moment on, you act with a completely new kind of force. Not because of inspiration, not because of pressure, but because you've sealed off every way back. And in that state, forward is the only direction you have left. You may have a clear goal. You may have built unshakable belief. You may have burned every bridge behind you and chosen to commit completely. But there is still one more element that can determine how far you go and how fast. The mental environment you live in every single day. No one becomes great in a limiting environment. No mindset can thrive if it is suffocated by negative energy, skeptical voices, and people who only know how to live in doubt. You are not only shaped by the decisions you make, but by the thinking of those you surround yourself with. That's why Napoleon Hill, in all his teachings on success, placed the concept of the mastermind at the very center. The mastermind isn't just a group. It's a mental atmosphere. It's a space where minds align in evolution, share the frequency of determination, and help each other keep the inner flame alive. It's where you don't need to explain what you're doing, because everyone in the circle is doing the same. They don't ask, why is it so hard? They ask, what step did you take today? In that environment, you can't fall back. You're being pulled upward by standards higher than any you've set for yourself. The problem is, most people don't have a mastermind. They live in environments where procrastination is normalized, where outdated thinking is recycled as truth, and where those who dare to be different are labeled as strange. They don't realize they're being programmed every day by the mediocrity around them, quietly but powerfully. You can't plant greatness in barren soil. You can't think like a builder if you spend every day talking to those who only know how to doubt. You can't stay consistent if there's no one around to remind you that you're building something bigger than yourself. Every conversation you engage in is reprogramming part of your mind. If those conversations are filled with exhaustion, criticism, retreat, and compromise, no matter how strong your initial motivation, you'll eventually wear down. But when you surround yourself with people who speak about vision, action, discipline, depth, and pushing limits, you can't help but rise. Not because you're forced to, but because you won't feel aligned with your old self anymore. That's the invisible but incredibly powerful elevation that only the right environment can offer. You can create your own mastermind, starting with just one person. One person who lives intentionally, speaks with purpose, and acts as if the future is already in motion. From one, you'll find another. And from there, you'll form a space where your thinking is reflected, sharpened, challenged, and elevated. This is not a community of numbers. It's a community formed by the quality of thought. In a true mastermind, you don't need to say much. You only need alignment. It's a space where no one needs to cheer each other with empty words, because strength is transmitted through how one lives, keeps their promises, and keeps moving forward despite all resistance. Remember, you don't need to wait for a mastermind to find you. You can start it by becoming someone with higher standards, by speaking with more depth, by acting with more force, and by letting the right people find you. And if no one comes, at least you've become a standard you can rely on during your most uncertain days. The mastermind isn't just a group. It's an inner vow that says, I will never accept living below my potential. Look at your circle again. Who elevates your thinking every time you talk to them? Who can you share your dreams with without fear of judgment? Who is living the discipline you're striving to build? If the answer is no one, then it's time to change your mental environment. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you're becoming someone new, and that new version of you requires a space that matches its growth. Loneliness won't kill you, but the wrong thinking around you can keep you stuck in mediocrity while making you believe you're trying hard. The truth is, most great individuals start alone, but they don't walk the entire journey alone. They build a mastermind as a survival strategy, not just to succeed, but to stay anchored in vision when storms come. So, if you're truly serious about your path, take a close look at the mental space you allow yourself to exist in each day. You are not only who you choose to become, you are also the sum of those whose minds you collide with most often. If you truly want to go far, it's time to choose your circle again. Not by emotion, not by history, but by mission. Belief isn't something you wait for, nor something that appears out of nowhere. Belief is something you actively build, like a bridge constructed from every brick, every joint, every solid layer of foundation. And the formula to build such a bridge isn't abstract. It's a repeatable process, a trainable habit, a way of life you can develop if you understand how it works. Because real belief doesn't come from hope. It comes from action. It isn't formed in a moment. It's forged through every intentional step, every deliberate choice, and every declaration you repeat daily with enough emotion to make your subconscious believe it. To embed belief deep into your core, you need three components: action, repetition, and emotion. These three form a closed-loop system where each element reinforces the others, creating an upward spiral that becomes irreversible. You cannot simply think your way into belief. You must rehearse it. Every time you act on what you believe, you're signaling to your subconscious, I am serious about this. Every time you repeat a positive affirmation, you overwrite old mental scripts rooted in your past. And every time you combine your actions and words with powerful emotion, with full presence, you open a gateway for your subconscious to absorb and store that message. The issue is, most people have no idea what they're repeating. They live unconsciously. They say things like, I'm not good enough. I'll probably fail again. Nothing ever works out for me. And over time, they start to believe these as truths. Not because they are true, but because they've been repeated with enough emotion that the subconscious accepts them as reality. On the other hand, successful people aren't free from doubt. They too have felt fear, hesitation, and self-questioning. But instead of letting their minds spiral, they deliberately reprogram themselves with new language, new behavior, and a new emotional state. Imagine this. Every morning, instead of grabbing your phone and getting swept into a sea of meaningless information, you spend just 3 minutes repeating the affirmation you've chosen. Not robotically, but with full presence. I act with clear purpose. I am a creator of results. I don't wait for motivation. I am the motivation. If you say this every day, with conviction in your voice, fire in your heart, and a vivid vision in your mind, soon you won't need to force yourself to believe it. You'll begin living as though it's already true. Belief doesn't need to be absolute from the start. It just needs to be nurtured consistently, deeply, like planting a seed. You don't expect it to sprout the next day. You simply keep the soil nourished, the light warm, and the belief steady. That's why you can't expect long-term results from hearing it once, reading it once, or acting on it once. Real power comes from intentional repetition, not mindless repetition, but ritual, where each time you speak, write, visualize, or act, you're engraving a new definition of who you are becoming. All of this means nothing without the most crucial element: emotion. Emotion is what opens the gate to your subconscious. A sentence, no matter how true, won't register if spoken passively. But if you say a simple, powerful sentence with real emotion, sharp focus in your eyes, and your body moving in rhythm with your declaration, it becomes an internal command. And once the subconscious accepts that command as reality, it begins to rewire your behavior, reactions, and decisions to align with that belief. This is why so many remain trapped in cycles of limitation. Because they attach powerful emotions to the wrong scripts. They vividly recall rejection, criticism, and past pain, and they replay it over and over with emotional clarity. They let that become their identity and live accordingly. But if you can shift your direction, if you can choose a new story to repeat with the same level of emotional intensity, aimed at growth, strength, and rise, then you'll witness something extraordinary. Your identity will change, shaped by your new belief. You'll act differently. From new actions, you'll produce different results. And from those new results, you'll reinforce your new belief. Once that cycle is activated, it will carry you beyond your old limits into a realm where you no longer ask, "Can I do this?" Instead, you'll affirm, "I am doing this. Every day, I am moving closer to the strongest version of myself." You don't need the world to believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself. Strongly enough, long enough, and deeply enough. And that doesn't come from luck. It comes from action. From writing down your personal declaration. From reading it each morning. From living it daily. From pouring real emotion into every repetition. And one day, when you start acting as if it's the most natural thing in the world, you'll realize belief doesn't need evidence. It just needs emotionally driven consistency. There is an unwritten law that governs every form of lasting success. It's a law not taught in schools, not printed in job contracts, but behind every major breakthrough of great individuals. That law is, you will be rewarded exponentially when the value you create far exceeds what is expected. Not rewarded based on time, not based on degrees, not based on feelings, but based on the real value you deliver, especially when no one is watching. The world doesn't reward those who merely meet expectations. It elevates those who create impact. Those who do a little more, go one step further, those who don't need to be asked to act. Those who treat excellence as an internal standard, not a rare exception. And from that mindset of doing more than you're paid for, greater rewards begin to appear. Not instantly, but inevitably, and with more permanence than any fixed salary. Charles M. Schwab didn't become president of the steel empire because of a prestigious background or superior technical skills. He stood out because of his attitude, initiative, ability to work without being reminded, finesse in behavior, and his willingness to always do more than what was assigned. And from being an ordinary young man, he became the one Andrew Carnegie trusted the most, the one who was paid more than anyone else at the time. Andrew Carnegie was the same. He didn't rise through capital or privilege. He started in a telegraph office, learned Morse code without being asked, memorized train schedules no one required him to know. Why? Because he understood that every extra effort is a quiet investment in the future, a form of contribution that average people would never value in the moment. But great ones perform as if there's no other option. And this isn't just true for historical figures. It applies to you every single day, every task, every conversation, and every moment you choose to go the extra inch. When you choose to write a clearer email, help someone before they ask, or finish a task at a higher standard than expected, you're creating value that others can't help but notice, sooner or later. And that's when the law of exponential return begins to operate. It doesn't reward step by step. It rewards accumulation and explosion, like planting tiny seeds, watering them daily, adding nutrients, but seeing no growth in the early months. Then, one day, the tree shoots up at a pace no one expected. And people will think you became successful overnight. But you and I both know that success was the reward for hundreds of quiet actions done without applause. And that's why you must not act only for recognition. If you only do great work when someone is watching, if you only push when there's a promised reward, if you only excel under pressure, the reward you get will always be limited. Because you're living as someone who needs permission to shine. But those who are truly exceptional don't wait for permission. They create their own standards and repeat them daily, until others must adjust just to keep up. That's what I want you to understand. The value you create always precedes the reward. If you persist in living by that principle, you'll never run out of opportunities, because the world is desperate for people it can trust with a task. People who don't work to the minimum, but work to the level of how great they can make it. People who don't need a title to act, but whose actions build a title. When you live this way, you become a reference point. Those around you begin comparing themselves to you, not because you force them to, but because you make mediocrity feel unacceptable. You raise the bar. You change how people view work. And from there, you no longer have to ask for opportunities. They come to you because you've become irreplaceable. And here's the irony. The more you live like this, the freer you feel. Not because you're doing less, but because you're no longer dependent on someone else's validation. You know the value you're creating. You don't need applause to believe in yourself. You don't need recognition today, because you know the reward is compounding and will arrive at the most unexpected moment in a way that cannot be stopped. So begin with the smallest things. Finish your task with a level of care higher than usual. Take one more step. Write one more line to make it clearer. Help one more person when you can. Refine one detail others overlook. And repeat those acts every day, quietly, consistently, without needing praise. Because you know you're planting seeds that will inevitably bloom. That is the essence of the law of exponential return. It doesn't require you to be brilliant from day one. It only asks that you live each day slightly above the standard. Do more, give more, refine more. Not for immediate gain, but because you're building a level of excellence the world can't ignore forever. And when the world finally sees it, you won't have to fight for acceptance. You'll be invited, valued, and rewarded. Not by luck, but because you've lived by the law of growth. There is one thing that determines how many doors you'll be invited into, how much others trust you, and how far and deeply you can lead. A truly successful journey. It's not your skills, not your credentials, not your IQ. It's your character. More specifically, the inner magnetism shaped by the depth of who you are. This is what makes people remember you, want to work with you, and respect you, even before you say a word. A magnetic character is not a trick to win favor. It's not a polite smile or a performance of humility. It's an energy field you emit when sincerity, stability, and conviction converge within you so powerfully that others can feel it. You can be brilliant, intelligent, and hardworking. But if you don't know how to make others want to be around you, trust you, and collaborate with you, your talent will have a ceiling, because no one succeeds alone. And in a world increasingly noisy, argumentative, and filled with demanders and complainers, a person with magnetic character becomes the rarest kind of asset. That person enters a room and calms the air. Speaks a word, and people listen, not because of volume, but because of calm depth. Not because of looks, but because of presence. Not through manipulation, but through inspired integrity. So where does that kind of character come from? Not from academic knowledge, not from presentation skills, not from performing well in a few encounters. It comes from the life you've lived, from the principles you keep when no one is watching, from how you speak honestly, live authentically, keep your word, and guard your heart, from the way you stay calm when insulted, from how you make others feel truly heard, from your eye contact when someone is speaking, from the way you're fully present in every conversation, from the kindness you carry without ever compromising your standards. Andrew Carnegie wasn't the richest man because he talked the most. He listened more. He made others feel important. He remembered names, acknowledged effort, and encouraged growth, not to win anyone over, but because he genuinely cared about people. Charles M. Schwab was described as having a smile that could ease the greatest tensions. He wasn't a technical genius, but he won hearts with his steadiness, calmness, and sincere positivity. They didn't dominate, they didn't shout, but they persuaded through the strength of character. A quality no one can fake for long. A person with a magnetic character isn't someone who always says what others want to hear. They dare to speak the truth, but they do so with respect. They set high expectations, but lead with inspiration. They don't try to make everyone like them, yet people feel they become better just by being around them. That becomes the most powerful force in any career, because no one forgets how you made them feel. Skills can be replaced. Achievements can be surpassed. But the impact of true character cannot be erased. Do you want your career to rise quickly and grow sustainably? It starts with how you enter every interaction. When you speak, do you truly listen first? When you propose something, do you maintain respect? When you're assigned a task, what spirit do you bring? When you compliment someone, is it sincere? When you disagree, do you stay composed? All these seemingly small moments are the threads that weave your character. The beautiful part? You don't need to perform to be magnetic. You simply need to return to your true values and live them deeply every day. Ask yourself, am I leaving behind a mark of kindness? Do others feel lifted when they're around me? Am I holding to my chosen principles even when no one praises me? Make that your internal standard. Ultimately, the most impactful people are not the loudest, but the most authentic. And if you're on a path to build a career that's not only successful but meaningful, know this. Your character is your eternal brand, not your logo, not your profile, not your follower count, but the energy that lingers after you leave the room. The impression that doesn't need effort. The remembrance that doesn't need reminding. The respect that doesn't need to be asked for. And if you build that, wherever you go, you'll always be welcomed. Because you will be the kind of person people want to work with, walk with, and be led by. Now, if you've made it to the final part of this journey, there's only one thing I ask of you. Don't let these values sit in your heart as a momentary inspiration. Turn them into a living practice. You've understood the power of aligned thinking, trained belief, decisive commitment, a supportive mental environment, and a character that can't be imitated. Now, it's time to begin. Not next week, not next month, not when you're ready, but tomorrow. Step out of your home with a clearer presence. Communicate with more grounded stillness. Work with deeper purpose. And treat everyone, including yourself, with greater reverence. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to compete to be seen. You only need to live as someone who has chosen a higher standard, and the rest will follow naturally. I wish for you not just success, but for you to become a living symbol of maturity, integrity, and quiet influence. Wherever you go, may your presence soften the room, clarify the purpose, and inspire those still searching for someone to follow. Because sometimes the greatest change in someone's life doesn't come from a lesson, but from a person who knows how to live with depth, with beauty, with vision. And I believe you are that person.